Wolfpack, what is going on? Your boy, the Wolf of RotoStreet. RotoStreetJournal.com. We breed and feed you fantasy wolves here with your preseason week one recap, diving into all the stats, usage, injury, trends, takeaways you need to know. There's so much noise in the preseason. You do not want to overreact, but there are tons of things you do want to actually take note of, and we're going to dive right into what should be noted. Chase Brown, the first riser we will talk about. He sees 5 carries, 23 yards, in addition to 3 catches, 25 yards, 8 touches, 48 yards from scrimmage in just 2 drives of offense, plays 75% of the snaps, 100% carry share, 30% target share, 60% route share. When do we start talking about Chase Brown as a potential round 1 pick? He is the man. One other note on this backfield is that Taj Brooks is probably the clear handcuff. Looked solid enough himself, but this is going to be the Chase Brown show as long as he is healthy. You don't need me to praise Joe Burrow, but 9 of 10, 123 yards, 2 touchdowns in a quarter of action. We're not going to get a slow start in 2025. I think that's the big takeaway here. Bengals do not play their starters in the preseason, but here they are, and they're looking like a well-oiled machine. I mean, we could see a 5K, 50 touchdown season out of Joe Burrow, a Peyton Manning style, massive, massive year. And then Ja'Marr Chase, how high can he go? 4 catches, 77 yards, 1 touchdown, 40% target share. Just confirmation the guy is the number 1 overall pick in 2025. If you have the first pick, do not overthink this one. On the other side, Will Shipley, he starts over A.J. Dillon, sees 7 carries, 48 yards, hauls in a pass for 4 yards as well. 100% of snaps, 100% of routes, and 100% of carries with the quote-unquote first team. There was no Jalen Hurts. No real other starters, but still good to see Shipley is the clear number 2 other than behind Saquon Barkley. We know about the curse of 400 touches, the curse of 2,000 yards, the Madden curse, lots of things that point to what if Barkley broke down? Well, I don't fully buy into all those things, but still it's good handcuff clarity here for Will Shipley. We also saw Keaton Mitchell, rocket ship next to his name, one of my favorite sleepers here. He proves that the hype is true, that he's back to rookie season form. 9 carries, 68 yards, and a touchdown. Had back-to-back 20-yard runs, including a 22-yard touchdown run. All the buzz that his speed looks just like he was as a rookie when he averaged 8.4 yards per carry, led the entire NFL, looks fully warranted. He plays 75% of the snaps with the starters, 60% of routes, and gets the vast majority of the carries as well. Granted, of course, no Derrick Henry. Justice Hill also rested, but to see him look as explosive as he did, that was the biggest takeaway for me. Yes, all that hype is warranted on Keaton Mitchell. Definitely one of my favorite last-round sleepers you can take a stab at. Ty Warren on the other side gets 3 catches, 40 yards, had a 4th catch and 7-yard gain called back by penalty, but a 25% target share, was the clear offensive engine. Granted, no Downs, no Pittman, but all the buzz in camp is that Warren has looked like the true number 1 receiver in this offense. He has a role similar to Brock Bowers, where they're dinking and dunking. We talked about him on last episode when we talked about the 10 players skyrocketing up my board. All the hype has been huge on Ty Warren. His collegiate senior season was one for the record books. I really like this prospect. I love that he just stepped right in, showed he belonged, was bowling over NFL defenders, looked great out there. Anthony Richardson is a down arrow, pinky injury. It is, quote, day-to-day. He did miss that blitz, though. The whole knock on him is, does he know his reads, his coverages? And ultimately, not a great first debut here for Richardson, and should be back sooner than later in practice. But what if this is the thing that opens the door for Daniel Jones? It just shows, and as a reminder, how fragile the situation is. Do we really want to be investing a quarterback spot in best ball on either of these guys? The Richardson upside is very real if he's fallen late enough, but still, definitely a little bit of a concern there. A.D. Mitchell, the last Colt to talk about. Again, no Downs, no Pittman, but he leads the team with 4 targets. Also catches 2 of them for 37 yards. Classic overthrows, classic drops. He has been the star, though, in camp, has A.D. Mitchell. And so ultimately, the hype seems to be building. You have Alec Pierce now banged up with a groin injury. Definitely one of those late round, 20-round type drafts on DraftKings, something of that nature. You might put his name and file that one away. And then DJ Giddens just gets kind of that emoji. Ty Goodson did start this game, but ultimately 15 of 20 snaps did go to DJ Giddens, 9 of 14 routes, 4 of the 5 first-team carries. all went to DJ Giddens. He finished the day with 6 carries, 17 yards, nothing overly impressive, but it seems like he is in the lead for the invaluable handcuff role to Jonathan Taylor, who's missed 3+ games in 3 straight seasons. And so he gets a little bit of a didn't overly impress, but did look like he was going to be the backup there for this. And then moving on to the Raiders now. I want to emphasize this is a very slight down arrow for Ashton Jeanty, but he gets 3 carries, -1 yards from scrimmage. And again, not overvaluing his preseason performance, not trying to put much stock in this, but I will note that that line looked atrocious. He could not get an inch of running room. And when we're looking at the end of round 1, where he's going, right, you got Devon Achane, you've got Derrick Henry, these monsters that we've seen as proven fantasy products. And of course, all those elite wide receivers going in that range in terms of BTJ, Nico Collins, Malik Neighbors. Don't get me going on him. What a legend he is. Ultimately, when you start splitting hairs and who am I going to invest in for all of these crucial picks, there just seems to be a little bit more risk with Jeanty, especially with the line looking as bad as it is. So I still have him, 14th overall. Still think he's going to be an absolute animal. All the hype of this kid being a true special talent, I fully buy. But ultimately, we have Pete Carroll, who's never given, even a guy like Marshawn Lynch, no running back has ever hit 70% of the snaps in a Pete Carroll offense. And so Ashton Jeanty, when he got that quote from Pete Carroll, I'm not relying on one guy. You guys know this. There's a little bit of a committee concern. There's a little bit of a line concern. There's just enough to file away right now that makes him a little bit less attractive at the end of round 1 than some of those other guys, in my opinion. Very slight downgrade, but also very important things to note, in my opinion. In terms of the receivers for the Raiders, we had Dante Thornton rising while Jack Bech continues to fall down. Thornton did play all the snaps with the starters well ahead of Bech through training camp. It included preseason week 1 action as well. And Thornton was running wide open multiple times on the night. He only had ultimately 1 catch for 17 yards. It came from Aiden O'Connell and not Geno Smith, but he could have had 50, 60 yards. He had a woefully underthrown ball from O'Connell. He got overthrown by Geno. Just really, though, the kid is popping. Remember, he averaged 25 yards per reception in college, 4.3, runs a 4.3 40 at 6'5", one of 3 players to ever be in those measurables, Calvin Johnson, DK Metcalf being those other ones. And Bech, meanwhile, he's going deep into the second half of this game, still only goes 1 catch, 5 yards. Overlapping skill set, it would seem, 2 Bowers, 2 Myers. So it seems like Thornton bringing way more real-life juice to this offense, a way more valuable field-stretching X. And right now, the field is just too jammed for Bech to make an early rookie impact here. Still like the talent, but definitely a concern overall. Torrey Horton, he looked very, very impressive. He's been tearing up camp. Teammates comparing him to Jerry Rice Jr. was one of the craziest hype quotes I've ever seen. But ultimately, he gets 7 targets, leading the team with 7 targets, leading the team with 3 catches, leading the team with 31 yards, and also scoring. There was, of course, no JSN, no Cooper Kupp, but you love to see the guy perform when he gets his first NFL opportunity. 6'2", really strong 40. He was in the top 10th percentile, 90th percentile rather, for the size, speed, relative athletic score, and he is showing really well so far in camp. Carried it over into his first NFL action. You love to see it. And a quick note for the Seahawks running backs, this is a Kubiak zone scheme, absolutely cooking. We didn't see either Charbonnet or Ken Walker, but all the backups finding oodles and oodles of space, oodles, baby, of space throughout the night. The wide open drive a truck through lanes were there, and especially fullback Robbie Oots looking like a monster, just bulldozing people in there. So you got to feel good about Ken Walker and Zark Charbonnet with these beasts there. That recaps all of the Friday action. As you can see, I'm trying to get through all of this in 30 minutes or less. If you enjoy what you're hearing at any point, guys, please do consider hitting that thumbs up button. Let me know if any of it seems like fluff. I'm trying to cut through the fluff and get you just the stats, usage, and other takeaways, injuries, of course, that I think are crucial. But if you enjoy what you're hearing, heart button on Twitter, thumbs up on YouTube would be so greatly appreciated. Consider subscribing to the channel as well. Moving to the Friday stock watch, Trevion Henderson gets a few up arrows because he is so electric. As a Pats fan, I cannot wait to see what this kid does in his rookie season. First NFL touch, 100-yard kickoff return touchdown. But it wasn't just that. I'm not overreacting to a special teams play. Every time that ball was in his hand, Henderson looked like by far the most explosive player on the field. He had 1 rush, 18 yards, beautiful. 3 catches, 12 yards, bulldozing a safety, lowering that shoulder. All things you love to see from this rookie. At 50% of snaps, 75% routes, and 60% target share with the first team. 16% of carries was the only knock there. We did have Ramondre Stevenson getting 7 carries compared to just 1 for Trevion. But I found it interesting. Not only is Trevion clearly ahead of Antonio Gibson, who ran with the 2s for the rest of the night, but he also did not, Trevion, see a single snap with Josh Dobbs, whereas we had Ramondre playing a little bit later into that game as well. So maybe he's the true running back one. We know Josh McDaniels loves to pepper his running backs. James White type of skill set, but more explosive. Great pass protection as well. So electric, elite, 70-plus reception upside. I cannot wait to see what he would do with a James White style role. He's a beast. So I love Trevion Henderson. I was worried about the split, and that did give Ramondre a slight bump up. Again, getting 7 carries, 36 yards, looking solid, 84% of the carries with the first team. All solid, but again, he did play with Josh Dobbs deeper into the game, and I do think just the talent is going to be too wide, and Henderson's going to prove you can't keep him off the field by mid-season. But I do think Stevenson going in the 120s is a nice value, especially for a 0 running back team. I could have both these guys on my team, and I'd be okay as a kind of bridge. I do think Stevenson will get some touchdowns, will lead this team in carries. But ultimately, it was the Trevion Henderson show, and you should be very excited as a Patriots fan and fantasy owner for him. In deeper leagues, just tossing out Efton Chisholm. What is this creature? And Jalen Polk is dead to me and to everybody. He should not be on anyone's radar. I'm going to cut him on any dynasty roster I have him. I'm toast, just done with this guy. But 8 targets, 6 catches, 50 yards, and a score for Chisholm, who's looked great all training camp. I went to practice on Wednesday. He had a touchdown in that. He's definitely more of a backup, but almost like a handcuff to Demario Douglas, would go right into that slot and be a maven potentially. And so I like Efton Chisholm. I think he is a solid sleeper in deep dynasty leagues. And again, I'm done with Jalen Polk. Don't want to see him again in a Patriots uniform. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, one quick note was he started the game. We didn't have Brian Robinson. We didn't have Eckler. But it is worth noting on a roster that has McNichols, who I think is solid. It was JCM, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Bill. It was getting the start. The quote came out today that they thought the Commanders, this was the steal of the draft, in their opinion. We didn't get anything crazy. 7 carries, 24 yards, a catch for 8 yards. Did have a few really nice gains called back by penalty, though. And just a further confirmation, he is the number 3 back in this Commanders offense that is projected to score the 5th most points by Las Vegas this year. So I still love the sleeper hype on him. I do think if he can continue to pop, this is not an impossible depth chart to ascend. So nothing that sent him upwards other than the fact that he has the clear role, but still really intrigued by him. Moving on to the Browns, Shedeur Sanders, probably not going to matter for 2025 fantasy, but if you're into dynasty, you're looking for a guy that could potentially blossom down the road. I mean, he goes 138 yards, 2 touchdowns, adds 4 for 19 on the ground, and just looks so comfortable, like he belonged on this field. The protection was solid for him all night as well, which is an up for this entire franchise. It just shows that it was crazy, the draft day fall that this guy had. And even if I don't think he's going to be a starter this year for the Browns or wherever he could land out, it does probably move up to number 2 quarterback. And maybe midseason he does end up taking over for Joe Flacco at some point. Just a very impressive showing from Shedeur, even if it's not going to matter much for fantasy owners. I did want to note Bryce Young, Ted McMillan, and Jalen Coker. Surgical opening drive from Bryce Young. 4 6, 58 yards, touchdown. Should have been 5 for 6 with the score, but he had a drop by McMillan at the goal line. A beautiful move from McMillan to shake his receiver, moving just smoother than a big body like his should, and ultimately was not ready for the throw that Bryce Young just put right on the money there. So I loved what I saw from Bryce Young. It looked like the guy in the second half of the year that he was the quarterback 6 from week 12 on. Looked very solid ever since taking back over for Andy Dalton. McMillan himself does a beautiful timing anticipation throw. Ultimately goes 2 catches, 43 yards on 3 targets, but should have had that touchdown again at the goal line. But still considering him a riser, given how good Bryce Young looks, given that McMillan himself was moving around so well. Coker did end up getting the touchdown after McMillan dropped it. He had 2 catches, 17 yards, and a score. There's some buzz that he was going to get cut in camp. I wouldn't buy into that at all. Coker looked solid too. Quick note on the backfield. You got to bump Rico Dowdle up a bit, and I do bump Chuba just slightly. This was another one on Twitter that a lot of people, oh my God, you're overreacting to preseason. I'm not. He's not like falling out of my round 5 where I have him right now. He drops like 2 to 3 spots at most. But we're talking, you got to find every data point that could potentially matter here. And we had Dowdle mix in for 7 of the 13 first-team snaps, 4 of 7 routes, 2 of 5 carries with the starters, whereas Chuba had 6 of 13, less snaps, less routes. He did have 3 of the 5 carries. Neither looked great as a runner. 4 touches for 27 yards, though, for Dowdle, because he did have a nice 20-yard reception. Chuba had 3 carries for 10 yards. Again, nothing to panic about. In fact, the fact that this offense looked solid again with Bryce Young, great for both of them. But maybe this will be a little bit more of a committee than what we had the last year. That workhorse role was really what allowed Chuba Hubbard to thrive. And if this is going to be a 60-40 split, let's say, that would definitely ding Chuba. So when you're looking like Chuba Hubbard versus Ken Walker, these guys that are going in the same price range, another one of those things you don't want to go crazy and, I'm not drafting Chuba at all. But I don't really tend to land him much, and this is just another note for that. One last thing for the Browns was Jerome Ford, got the, quote, starter's rest type of treatment. He has been reportedly the 1A in camp to Sampson's 1B, and it's very early, but Sampson, 2 carries, 6 yards with the first-team offense doing nothing. If this guy rips off a 50-yard touchdown looking electric like he did in college, okay, maybe we can push Ford to the side and not really worry about him. But to me, Jerome Ford is one of the best buys in fantasy right now, going in the 160s, forgotten by drafters. He's probably going to start, and we've seen him as a starting running back have 20-point days. This guy has some real upside, Jerome Ford, real speed. Some of the metrics in terms of success rate, yards after contact per attempt, he checks all the boxes in that sense. So he's becoming a new Wolf target when I update the guide with all this note. Jerome Ford is going to be Wolf stamped for the bargain that you can get this guy at. And just a quick note on Isaac Tesla for the Lions. He continues to get first-team reps, and he's showing why. Another touchdown, 2 catches, 18 yards, and a score. Maybe, just maybe, leaps Tim Patrick, and anybody that's seeing meaningful time for one of the league's most explosive offenses is worth noting. Moving on to Saturday in a second, but 300 of you are already here. Love to see it. Thank you so much again for your support. One more call for a thumbs up if you enjoy what you're hearing, a heart button on Twitter, wherever you're at, to help us get out to more people. And I do want to pump out the draft guide. It is pinned at the top of the website, rotostreetjournal.com. One of the only things, actually the only thing we charge for at Roto Street Journal. I spend so much time on it. I love it. I think it came out phenomenal this year, getting great reviews so far. We had the best first week we've ever had in terms of sales, and thank you guys so much for your support. If you'd like to support your boy, that is one of the only things that we will ever charge for is that draft guide, and everybody seems to be raving about how it came out so far. So hopefully you guys enjoy it out there. Let's move on, though, to Saturday preseason notes, and I have a few arrows up for Calvin Ridley. A whopping 42% target share, 86% of Ward's yardage went to Calvin Ridley as well. 3 catches, 50 yards, and Ward looking very solid, but ultimately that rapport was great too. Ridley just getting open at will, according to all training camp reports. Well, that's what it also looked like in this first preseason action. He is definitely climbing up my big board for sure, my wide receiver rankings. Really, really impressed with how he looked, how him and Ward were connecting. And Ward just looked poised, ready for the NFL, what you want to see from your first overall pick for the Titans. So that was intriguing. It's worth noting that Chigo Konku played every single snap with the starters. He ran 8 of 8 routes. Last year, he was stuck in a rotation for the majority of the season, but really ended up taking off towards the end of the year. And now it seems like he's picking up where he left off. Just 1 catch, 10 yards, not going crazy over the production here. But the fact that he was not rotating in with any other tight ends gives him that springboard to keep that success we saw over the last 3 weeks of the season. Now, we had a bigger injury note here is Tajay Spears suffers a high ankle sprain labeled week to week. They're hoping he'll be back for the start of the season, but is far from a guarantee, according to Adam Schefter. And so that does bump Tony Pollard up. He scored the touchdown, capped off a drive here, and maybe we'll get a workhorse Pollard role just like we had last year. Was the running back 9 in both snap share and opportunity share. And it seems like that door is open yet again. I love the fact that he did score that touchdown. Again, it's a, oh man, he scored a preseason touchdown. Let's go crazy. But I was very worried Khalil Mullins, this bulldozer out of Michigan, could very easily be a goal line vulture. But it was great to see they let Pollard capped that drive off. And so with Spears now shelved, he definitely has to fall quite a bit in the rankings, whereas Tony Pollard gets a little bit of a bump up too, especially after proving he is the goal line back there. Rachaad White, another injury that you need to watch. He suffers a groin injury. They're doing some testing today, was the report. And so we don't know exactly the extent of this. Sounds like he did get in there for one more carry before he jogged off. So ultimately, it's probably nothing too crazy if he was able to stay in the game. But everything, anytime that he misses, could be big. Bucky Irving, if he gets a stranglehold on that passing down work, he's already a mid to late second round pick. He would belong in round 1 if Rachaad White's going to miss significant time. And also Sean Tucker, who always flashes anytime he's given the chance. Nothing crazy in terms of the production, 13 carries, 50 yards and a score, but just the eyeball test. You see the guy moving so well for his big body and size. And anytime he's gotten the opportunity, he always rises to the occasion. So for those of you in dynasty leagues, and maybe redrafted for Rachaad White's injury lingers on, keep note of this Sean Tucker kid, but especially in dynasty where he's going to be a free agent next year. Love how he pops every time he gets the rock. Travis Hunter, nothing crazy production-wise, 2 catches but for 9 yards. The big note, though, 11 of 12 snaps with Trevor Lawrence. The Jaguars were in 3 wider sets for nearly the entire night, 92% of the snaps. Liam Cohen last year used 3 wide receiver sets 71% of the time, which was 8th in the NFL. And the Rams, he used it at 91%, which was the most in the NFL. And so that's what we saw in early preseason action was 3 wide receiver sets nearly every single time Travis Hunter was out there, 11 of 12 again for him. And just in the slot for a good amount of those. 5 of his 11 snaps were in the slot. So that's where we talked about Liam Cohen has really generated some insane production from his slot weapons. Looks like Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas are going to be rotating back and forth in there. Great to see, though. It's definitely looking like that. Offense first, then defense when we need him and have to use him type of mindset. So for a freak athlete like Travis Hunter, who in my opinion was the best like pure wide receiver in this class, if he was to play every snap, well, it's looking like he might play every snap. So I'm a huge fan of him. He gets a nice little bump up the big board. Jaguars backfield notes. After Bigsby's getting all the run with the ones, getting the first carries of the day, seeing 2-minute work, what happens in this game? Travis Etienne starts and plays the entire drive with the first team, leaving nothing for Bigsby until the 2s. Now, Etienne was unimpressive. 2 carries, 6 yards. He did have a nice 10-yard catch, sure. But ultimately, all those reports about Bigsby being the clear number 1, I don't know. Maybe not the case. Some people speculating maybe the Jags were showcasing Etienne for a trade. Maybe that's wish casting for you Bigsby people. Who knows? I still don't believe in Etienne. I think he's still too overpriced. I think he's soft. I think he stinks. I'm not an Etienne fan. This isn't going to change my opinion on him necessarily, but it is important to note, especially for those that are starting to invest in Bigsby more, that Etienne was the clear lead starter. Meanwhile, Bashal Tutin, though, RB3, looking great. 6 carries, 24 yards, a very impressive, powerful touchdown run where he was like stuffed 7 yards out from the run, and he just continued to churn those legs and plow his way into the end zone. He also hauls in 2 catches for 16 as a pass catcher. He's still my favorite here. Bashal Tutin, the upside play going far after both the Bigsby and Etienne stocks. So I love Bashal Tutin. I thought he looked phenomenal and think he is the sneaky winner of anything here. Caleb Johnson, this one, everybody that has Caleb Johnson out there wants this to just defend him to the grave. And I'm not overreacting again to the fact that he played behind Kenny Gainwell. I'm not saying it's going to be the case in the season. I don't think Kenny Gainwell is going to be overly meaningful, but we're talking about Arthur Smith here. He had Bijan in a timeshare as a rookie, and I will not rule out the fact that Caleb Johnson, already we can see Jaylen Warren getting the starter's rest treatment. He's been better in camp. He's been certainly better as a pass protector, which is an area that Johnson, he's fumbled, he's missed blocks, hasn't looked great in camp. Then he comes in here, gets 7 carries, 20 yards, does not look impressive at all on them. And again, playing behind Kenny Gainwell. And like I said, I don't expect Johnson to be behind Gainwell throughout the year. But I think Gainwell is going to start rotating in now. We always had Cordarrelle Patterson mixing in, and Bijan Algier is seeing nearly half the work with Patterson as well. I don't trust Arthur Smith at all. And so I don't like Caleb Johnson at his price. He's going 2 rounds ahead of Warren, who I do believe is the starter, who probably will have more fantasy points on the year. And ultimately, if Gainwell's also going to be mixing in here, I think you have to consider it a little bit of a stock down here for Caleb Johnson, as exciting of a running back talent as he is. Maybe I'll look foolish. Maybe I'll take an egg on the face there because he does have the talent to potentially do it, but it's not showing up so far. And he's also just a three-headed potential nightmare would make his stock that much grosser. Justin Fields, looking solid, completes 75% of his passes, 42 yards, then runs in a touchdown, 2 carries, 14 yards in the score on the ground. Looks like any concern about that foot injury from earlier can be erased. A reminder of his Konami upside there as well. So good to see Fields, after all these reports of him struggling with accuracy in camp, 4 of 16 days, 2 of 10 days, looking really solid in his debut here for the Jets. So that was a nice little breath of relief for those of you that are invested in Fields so far. The backfield, though, some important nuggets. They've talked all offseason, has Aaron Glenn, the Lions-inspired scheme. We're going to get multiple runners involved. This is going to be a committee. Well, that's exactly how it was in the opening of the preseason. 50% of snaps went to Breece. He had 5 of them, while Isaiah Davis rotated in for 3, and Braylon Allen rotated in for 2 snaps as well. Ultimately, Breece had 3 carries for 9 yards. Braylon was the most impressive rusher, getting 8 carries on the night for 33 yards, whereas Isaiah Davis, 6 carries, 14 yards, and added an 11-yard catch. But a 3-headed nightmare is very rarely what you want in fantasy. So a slight down for Breece at the current moment. On the other side of things, Jaden Reed was in a walking boot. That's good news. Thanks for reporting that one, Green Bay. We need more info, but definitely a little bit of a bump down. We did see Jordan Love also look a little gross. 1 completion on 5 attempts, 7 yards. It went to Golden. Golden looking solid there, but ultimately a slight concern there for the Packers, especially with Jaden Reed in the boot. RJ Harvey, listen, 5th on the depth chart, starts the game with Bo Nix, gets 63% of the snaps, 45% of the routes, 20% target share, 100% carry share for RJ Harvey. Not bad for a 5th running back on the depth chart. 12 of the 13 snaps on 1st and 2nd downs went to Harvey, when the Broncos also targeted running backs at a very high rate with Sean Payton last year on 1st and 2nd downs. So I think Harvey, definite stock up. If anybody was overreacting to that 5th round, 5th depth chart, then you should never have been considering that. Preseason, those intern depth charts typically mean nothing, and this is clearly an example of that. Continue drafting Harvey in round 5 and 6. He's one of my league winners of 2025. Marvin Mims, some notable usage, sure. 1 catch, 3 yards, nothing in the box score is going to tell you, oh, wow, huge fantasy sleeper. The fact that he played 16 of 19 snaps with Bo Nix, he ran 9 of 11 routes with the first team. That is huge usage. Last year, outside of Cortland Sutton, there was only 3 times that a Broncos receiver hit 80% route share. And if Mims can do that consistently, we've seen the plays this guy can make. The yards per route run are always top 3 in the league for back-to-back years now. Last year down the stretch, he had 2 25-plus fantasy point days when he finally started to get used. This is huge if Marvin Mims can become that clear number 2. It looked like a very crowded depth chart between Troy Franklin, who looked pretty good himself, but also Pat Bryant, who they drafted. Vele always getting hyped up. Looks to me like Marvin Mims is in that driver's seat for the number 2 role behind Cortland Sutton. And I love Bo Nix. I think he could have a Drew Brees level leap in year 2. So that means I definitely like me some Marvin Mims. Dalton Kincaid, still in a rotation with Dawson Knox. 5 snaps go to Knox, 4 for Kincaid. Knox scores the touchdown. It's just a reminder that when you're in a rotation as a tight end, it is going to be very hard to reach your fantasy ceiling. I've never been a Kincaid guy. Last year after he burned me, I will never go back to that well. And so, no, nothing for Kincaid. Just wanted to note he's still stuck in a rotation, not really emerging anything special there. Jackson Dart, meanwhile, looking very comfortable, very poised, delivering a beautiful 29-yard strike to little Jordan Humphrey. Ultimately goes 12 of 19, 154 and a touchdown, adding 3 carries for 24 yards. That led the team. So yeah, a little Konami boost there as well. I can't wait for him to take over this from Russ. We'll see when it is, but he definitely passed the eye test, the stats test, looking very solid so far in his preseason debut. And then Jordan Addison, we know the suspension looms, but looking very solid. There was no Jefferson out there. Still, though, with J.J. McCarthy, a 50% target share going to Jordan Addison. 3 catches, 33 yards on the first drive with JJ, who looked okay, he had his ups and downs, 4-7, 70 yards. Solid, though. Solid enough that I am thinking this offense can continue to thrive with Kevin O'Connell. Woody Marks plays behind Dare Ogunbowale. Yay. He also is very May with 3 carries, 4 yards, no receiving stats to note of. It's a big if. Is Mixon going to be ready? Who's going to be the guy behind him? If not, Chubb not looking explosive. Woody Marks also not looking very special himself. Michael Wilson gets a little bump down here, plays less snaps than Zay Jones with the first team. Zay Jones has 11. Wilson has 3. He did have a nice catch to convert a third down. I still think Wilson's probably the preferred fantasy option, but it also might just be 0 behind Marvin Harrison and, of course, Trey McBride there. So down a little bit slightly for Michael Wilson. Want to keep tracking. Is Zay Jones actually leaping him on the depth chart? And for dynasty owners out there, 49ers rookie Jordan Watkins. It's a wide open depth chart right now behind Pearsall and hopefully Jennings. We'll see what this calf thing, if that ever heals up. We know Ayuk's going to be on the mend for a bit here. And they're saying all day, very solid drumbeat for Jordan Watkins in camp. He lives up to the hype. 3 catches, 56 yards, looking solid. So those of you in deeper dynasty leagues have some bench space. Jordan Watkins is certainly an intriguing one to add there. We'll note, too, that Blake Corum was the clear number 2 back behind Kyren Williams. Kyren gets the rest treatment, of course. We do then get Corum going 9 carries, 32 yards, 2 scores, adds a catch as well. Jarquez Hunter looking okay, 11 carries, 41 yards himself. But if anything happens to Kyren, it does seem like Corum at minimum would be the goal line guy and probably the clear number 2 back. So he's the handcuff that's starting to go later, going after Jarquez Hunter. I think Corum is the guy that you still want in that situation. That wraps up a busy Saturday. We're going to now move on to the Sunday action, but one last call for the thumbs up button, the hearts, all that good stuff. It truly helps us so much. Kyle Monangai, 6 carries, 30 yards, looking powerful, gaining distance as potentially the clear number 2 behind DeAndre Swift at this point. Phenomenal penny stock. Definitely passed the eyeball test. Looks like he belongs at the NFL. They do have Jamal Williams coming in for a visit, which would be very annoying. He scored 17 touchdowns under Ben Johnson with the Lions just a few seasons ago. But ultimately, Monangai passes the eyeball test, looks solid so far. Luther Burden, 2 catches, 29 yards, converts a key 3rd and 16, getting positive praise from Ben Johnson after the game. He's working his tail off after getting harpooned by Ben Johnson early in training camp. It's good to see Burden seems to be back in his good graces. Sure, you could look at it as a negative that DJ Moore didn't play, Rome Odunze didn't play, but Burden did. But he played and he looked good. And what can you do? You're on the field. He needed some to catch up after missing all the OTAs. I'm not worried about the fact that he was out there and none of the other starters played. I think he has some ground to gain after missing so much time. And to me, he reminds me a lot of that rookie season Amon-Ra, where maybe he starts slow, doesn't do a ton, but when he gets his chance, he looks so electric with the ball in his hand already. And ultimately, that was his thing, yards after the catch maestro, with now the offensive coordinator in Ben Johnson that generates those opportunities better than anybody. So I thought this was a nice showing for Luther Burden. But very noteworthy here for the Dolphins backfield, Ollie Gordon looking phenomenal while Jalen Wright continues to suck all up and down the field. Wright going 3 straight goal line attempts and getting stuffed to the gills. They thought that this guy might ultimately play a bigger back. He came in looking yoked and, he's going to blow up now as a second year. He looked horrible as a rookie. He looks horrible again. 9 carries, 16 yards, 1.8 yards per carry. Did ultimately score a touchdown. Not in that sequence later on in the game, but still not a great showing for Wright. And meanwhile, Ollie Gordon, 9 touches, 72 yards from scrimmage and a touchdown, looking very impressive, over a 30-yard reception, had a nice 15-yard scamper. This is a former Doak Award winner, is the best running back in the nation his junior year. Definitely fell off a cliff his senior year, and there's some concerns as to why, but he looked juicy. He looked like the guy that was thriving over there. So ultimately, I do like Ollie Gordon. Think this is a nice rise. He becomes a penny stock I'm going to be targeting, whereas Wright, to me, you can toss him out. I want nothing to do with him this year. And last note, a down arrow going to Trey Harris. Plays a decent amount and does not log a single catch, had 1 target. You'd think at this point, two preseason games, he's seen some meaningful drives, still nothing to show for it. I get it. You don't want to overreact to preseason production, but you'd think if this kid is going to be as good as I thought he was going to be, the yards per route run against man, over 9 yards per route run in college against man coverage, over 5 yards per route run in general was both of the last decade, some of the highest numbers we've ever seen. I was very intrigued by Trey Harris as a prospect, by the landing spot, but now you add Keenan Allen, you have Trey Harris playing in the preseason, Quentin Johnston's getting the starter's rest treatment, and he's still not really showing much right now. So it's the preseason. He could still go crazy. But whereas this was a sleeper, I was very, very intrigued by Trey Harris. Now he's no longer in that clear must target range. All righty, Wolfpack. That wraps up all of the takeaways I have from the preseason week 1 action. Looks like we have a few legends in here. Michael Schneider, nice to see you, Wolf. It has been a long time. I haven't seen you live in a minute, so I'm so happy to see you, Michael. Thank you so much for your support. He said he bought the guide using for the Keeper League. Let me know your keeper question, Michael. Happy to answer it if you want to outline those. Giuseppe coming in to share his love, as you always do. Giuseppe, thank you so much. Guide is fire. So appreciative of you guys supporting your boy, making it so I can continue to do this. As a dad, as I've said a million times, time anybody that's a parent knows how your time becomes that much more valuable when you have a kid. You don't want to miss any time with them that you have free. And so you guys supporting your guy with the guide is so appreciated. It's at rotostreetjournal.com. If you appreciate my content, all this recap will go in the update log as well. So if you prefer to read it, it will be in the update log of the draft guide. And I'll make sure to make some of those big changes. Jerome Ford, now a target of mine. Some of these sleepers like Trey Harris getting bumps down, Kincaid making sure he's a clear fade in there. So I have a few things that will be changing in the guide. Those of you that bought it already, as you know, it will be delivered to your inbox with the updates. But guys, thank you so much for being here. Me and the Truth will be getting live a few times this week, a few times next week as well, because it is go time. So favorite sleepers, mid-round breakouts, busts, all of that will be coming throughout the week. We're probably going to be hitting mornings at 8 a.m. is the guess. So if you enjoy this content, hit that sub button so you don't miss a live stream. And of course, you can find me at RotoStreetWolf on Twitter and all of the content at rotostreetjournal.com. In a world full of fancy sheep, guys, be the wolf. Thank you again so much for being here. Later.